Board members, in addition to my overview of our return to school plan, for your approval this evening, for your consideration, is bulletin number 2, which is items 1 through 57, and addendum and read-ins 58 through 82. But I thought it would be appropriate to just provide a high-level overview of some of the components of the return to school plan so that I can pull out some of the distinct decisions that are being made here. I want to start, first of all, with a look back at our 2020-21 school year. I know board members saw this in June as part of our end-of-year presentation. A reminder to our group that we began school on time. We began with a cohort model and virtual Fridays. Eventually, the virtual Fridays were returned back to in-person days. A little at a time, our principals began to advocate for certain groups of students, such as our seniors at risk for graduating, our English language learners, our resource room students, to begin to attend on a weekly, non-cohort basis, and we were able to do that each time the request came forward. By February, we began conversations about combining the cohorts so that we would no longer be on a week A, week B model, but that any student who wanted to attend could begin attending weekly. And we staggered our entrance into that model so that our high schools started first in March, and then our middle schools, and then our elementary schools finally in April. And then as we began to move into May, our conversations with our administrators began to focus on having a full day of school and lunches. And we were successful in implementing that after Memorial Day for the month of June. So we ended the year in a very positive way. And despite all of the challenges that were in place, I think it was a very successful and positive school year. We certainly learned a lot. And I bring this up because many of the practices that were in place last year, many of the protocols, are things that are following through and continuing. If we offer just a high-level comparison between last year and this year with some of the requirements that are in place, a full day of school with lunch last year, that was only for the month of June. This year, it's daily. Social distancing last year was a 6-foot requirement. This year, it's a 3-foot requirement. Cohorts were required last year and not this year. Remote learning option was required to offer to parents last year. We are not permitted to offer that this year as per the Department of Education. Masks were required last year indoors and outdoors up until the weather began to be excessively hot toward the end of the year. Masks continue to be required as per governor's directive for indoor only. Masks on school buses were required last year, and that continues this year. We continue last year and this year to focus on hand washing and having hand sanitizer available, and an emphasis on ventilation and a fresh air component. Contact tracing continues to be in place this year. Last year, we had staff and students during the weeks that they were attending completing a daily health screening online. We are not implementing that model this year, but as per the governor's most recent directive, unvaccinated staff must submit to weekly or twice a week testing. We did not run any field trips this year. We're going to pause field trips for the first marking period only this year and then reevaluate once we have a few weeks into the school year. Locker rooms were not opened at all last year, not even for athletics. For this year, athletics are allowed to use the locker rooms with distancing in place. We're not going to use the locker rooms at the middle or high school for the changing, for gym classes. And again, this is for the first marking period only until we're able to really assess the health of our schools, and then we can reevaluate that as we move into the second quarter of the school year. Some highlights of the return to school plan. The most recent executive orders, which were really just last week and this week, 251 and 253, both require that all school staff and students wear masks indoors, and for staff to be either vaccinated by October 18th of this year or to submit to weekly testing. Masks, again, must be worn on school buses at all times, sports trips included. Physical distancing of 3 feet will be encouraged in large group settings such as dining areas and phys ed classes. Our classrooms will be set up in such a way that promotes distancing and also supports student learning. We will not be holding large group assemblies or field trips other than our community-based special education trips for the time being. We will not be having locker room use, as I noted, except for school athletics for the first marking period. The federal government is continuing the free breakfast and free lunch program for all students this year. We are going to be offering, for the most part, prepackaged meals to comprise most of the choices, and that's just really for easier and cleaner dissemination. Lunch locations, and it really depends on the school, but lunch locations include some classrooms at the elementary level, multi-purpose rooms, cafeterias, gymnasiums, media centers, and that would be at the high school only, and supervised outdoor areas. All of our classrooms have adequate ventilation and a fresh air component, either through a rooftop HVAC unit or a window air conditioner. And I want to really call attention to the board's vision several years ago through budgeting to set aside a portion of money every year for the purchase of window units. The buildings most especially impacted by this are Parsippany High School, Brooklawn Middle School, and Central Middle School, and as of the most recent springtime purchase and installation, all of our classrooms have air conditioning, either through a window unit or through the rooftop unit. Our filters are changed on a regular basis, and teachers certainly may conduct lessons outdoors if they choose. Contact tracing and quarantining will follow the New Jersey Department of Health protocols. As always, we work closely with the local health officials to make these determinations. And quarantined students will have an excused absence and will access lessons either through Seesaw, which is typically our preschool and primary grades, or Google Classroom. At this time, we are not planning to live stream lessons. Teachers may include students virtually in specific portions of a lesson when it is instructionally appropriate to do so. Students in our self-contained classrooms may receive direct instruction from a staff member to ensure that their services are continued. And board members, once our meeting is concluded this evening, tomorrow the return to school plan will be posted to the district website. Right now it is accessible for people who looked at the board bulletin, and it was attached to that. It'll be on the main page. And then we have a question and answer sheet that was actually shared with parents in my last Friday's letter. That's under the Family Resources tab on our school website. Any questions that we get this evening, we will answer those through the question and answer format so that all families have access to that information.